What's up guys, welcome back to another tutorial, and in this video we're going to be drawing Hinata from Naruto. We're going to start with a perfect square that's going to be 3.5 inches on each side. In the upper right hand cube, we're going to start drawing her left eye. We'll begin by sketching the border of her eye, and then we'll draw the actual eyeball itself. Her eyes are going to be a solid white, so fortunately for us, we won't have to fill in too many details in her pupil. Now let's go ahead and define her eyelashes. We're going to draw a thick border between the top of her eye and the top of her eyelash, and then we'll draw two lashes on her left side. And that is going to be the top of the eyelid. That is going to be the bottom of the orbital bone. And finally, we're going to draw her eyebrow. Okay, and now that first eye looks a bit small to me, so I'm going to make the second eye bigger. And I don't know, I might still stick with the first at this point. I'll just have to compare which one looks better, and then I'll keep that one, and I may have to make an adjustment on the first one. But here I'm just going to repeat the same process on my right side that I had on my left side. And the the top of the eyelid and the eyebrow and orbital bone, we're going to keep all of those at the same heights. So the only thing we should have to adjust is the top of the eye. And yeah, so definitely I'm going to fix the left side. It's way too short. You can see the bottom of the two eyes are not aligned either. I'll fix that in just a second. But first we're going to fix the top of the left eye. And I actually used a ruler there to make sure this time that it's parallel from one side to the other. Should have done that from the beginning. Okay, so for the nose, we'll draw it just below the center of that cross. And notice that one side comes in sharply and the other side of the nose doesn't come in as sharply. That's because she is tilting her head and her body at a very slight angle. The mouth is going to stretch from the inside of one pupil to the inside of the other, so don't make it too large. And you can see the jawline actually started to accelerate. The slope of the jawline started to accelerate once you got past the mouth. So the bottom of her bangs are going to be almost lined up with the top of that square, but it's going to go inside of the square just a little bit, and the outside of her bangs are going to go down to her eyebrow. And then we'll start working on the outside of her hair, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. I accidentally cut off the top of the head in this shot, but you'll see it in just a second. Okay, so we're done with her head. Super easy. Now we can go ahead and get started on her jacket. And I know the playback speed is pretty slow here, but that's just for the benefit of anyone who wants to follow along to the drawing. I'll go ahead and speed it up once we get to the coloring process. Okay, so I'm gonna make an adjustment on her hair because I don't feel like I drew it wide enough. And I'm gonna do the same thing for the other side too. And now for the final touch, we're gonna add some highlights to her hair. Alright, let's go back to her face for a second because I want to make sure everything is lined up perfectly before we start the penning process. Sorry, my head keeps getting in the way there. Okay, we are finally done sketching. Now let's go ahead and start the penning process. Man, that was fast. No, I'm just kidding. That took me half an hour. So you'll notice I penned over everything except for the highlights in her hair. We're not going to pen over that. We're just going to leave that alone for now. So as you can see, I'm coloring with the E00 Copic marker, but guys, I had no idea I already ran out of ink, and I'm just struggling to get as much ink out of this as possible. You probably won't be able to tell, but it took me over 20 minutes just to color her face because, you know, in between intervals I had to wait for the tip to soak up some more ink. And there's still white on the paper, so I try my best to go over it with a color pencil as much as I can, and then smooth over the color pencil with the Copic marker again, but it was a disaster. I think it looks okay in the end, but yeah, that sucked. So my next drawing is going to be just straight color pencils because I don't have the E00 anymore. I ordered it. It's going to take a couple of days for it to come in. So we'll see what my next one is going to look like, just pure color pencil drawing. So you can see I shaded over the skin with a darker color pencil, something that will contrast with the first color we laid down. But I'm going to actually go over it again with an even darker pencil because I don't really see much difference between this and the first color we used. And I'm going to draw some shadow under her chin just to hide some of the mistake I made with some of the ink coming off. And for the eyes, we're going to use C0. And we're going to go over it with, we're going to shade over it with one of my brighter color pencils, but that didn't give enough contrast, so I went very light with a light touch with one of my lighter grays. And now I'm going to use C0 to go over her jacket, and guess what? This is completely out of ink as well, which shouldn't be a surprise because C0 and E00 are my two most commonly used markers. Alright, so I ordered those. They'll come in a couple of days, but for now let's go ahead and just continue with another color while I wait for C0 to soak back in whatever's left of the ink. So I'm not gonna lie, it was super hard for me to find the correct blues to use for her hair, since I only have the Copic B set. I don't have all the markers for the A set. So I had to mix it in with some color pencils, which I was gonna do anyways. And I'll go ahead and show you my process for that. My C0 completely died on me, so I'm gonna use a very light color pencil to just kind of smooth that over, and hopefully the colors match. They pretty much do. And now I'm gonna find a color that contrasts well with C0. It's gonna be slightly darker than that, a cool gray. And we're gonna use it to shade over her jacket, and we're also gonna use it to shade over her undershirts. And there's just going to be a little purple square right there. So I'm actually going to use a black color pencil to go over her eyebrows, because I don't want to risk accidentally inking over with the blue Copic marker. And I don't think it looks bad anyways. It'll look pretty good once we're finished with this. Right now it looks like it doesn't match her hair, but it'll look good at the end. Okay, so I'm going to go over her hair with my darkest blue Copic marker, and then I'm going to go over her hair again with my darkest blue color pencil, and it should give me close to the correct color. And I know you're probably getting dizzy from me turning the page so much, but it's really important to turn to a position where your wrist is comfortable, or more importantly, where you're coloring at the correct angle, because I don't want to make a mistake and color some blue under her face or outside of her hairline, because that's going to be a disaster. There's no fixing that. So my recommendation is to go real slow on the outside of her hair or in the corners. So you only have to go over it once to get that deep blue color. And then on the inside of her hair, you can go over as many layers as you want, because there's going to be very little risk that you're going to go over. I'm going to go over her highlights one more time to get rid of some of those patches of white and to just give it a deeper color. And then we'll start going over her hair with my darkest color pencil. You can tell we're totally coloring over some of those lines that we created earlier with the pen, especially her bangs. You can barely see them now. But don't worry, once we're done coloring, we're going to recreate her bangs with a pen. We're going to go over the whole thing with a pen again. Okay, now I'm going to use my dark gray and my black color pencil to create some shade on her headband. And I'm going to use a brown color to lightly go over some of the shade on her skin and under her hair. And finally, I'm going to shade over her hair between her bang and the inside of her shoulder, so that you can create some contrast in her hair there, inside and outside of her bangs. That's going to make it look way better. Alright, and finally we're going to go over the whole thing with a pen again, because at this point much of the lines that we created earlier are gone, so we have to recreate them. But be very, very careful, because you don't want to screw up the whole thing at the last second. So I'm finding these lines to be much easier to pen over than I initially did, because those grooves in the paper are already there and my hand just naturally goes over them. But still better to be careful and not rush it. Try to go as slow as you can. For her body, I'm only going to go over a few of the lines that have lost their visibility. I won't go over the whole thing. It's just not worth it to make a mistake here, because I mean it already looks fine. So there's very little to gain and a lot to lose. Let me put it that way. Alright guys, here's the finished product. As you can see, her skin is a bit uneven because obviously we ran out of E0. But as long as you don't run out of E0, you shouldn't have that problem. And yeah, otherwise, I think it turned out pretty well. Thanks again for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.